Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blissful Questions. My name is Saeed Ibnis, currently pursuing my master's at the Ontario College of Art and Design University in Inclusive Design. Today, I will be co-facilitating this interview with my classmate, Gulay Sayeda.
Hi, everyone. Today, we are in conversation with Shirley McNaughton, the grandmother of Bliss.
Shirley is a special educator who has been teaching first children and then adults with cerebral palsy since 1968. In 1971, as a member of an interdisciplinary team, she discovered and applied the language of Blissymbolics to the communication programs of children who were non-speaking.
Shirley is currently contributing to the Baby Bliss Bot project, also known as the BBB. The Triple B is examining how large language models can aid those facing significant communication challenges. Hi, Shirley. Thank you for being here with us today. We have a few blissful questions for you. And to start off, we were hoping if you could please tell us more about Blissymbolics and its history.
Thank you very much, Gulay and Sai. I'd like to begin by expressing my appreciation for being part of the Baby Bliss Bot project. It's so rewarding for me to see a group of specialists who are coming new to Bliss symbols to work so hard to maintain the integrity of the language. I really appreciate that. And now I'll begin with a very short overview of the history of Blissymbolics as it's being used by persons who are unable to speak. And they're using it within this broad field of augmentative and alternative communication, AAC. Mr. Bliss worked on the development of Blissymbolics as an international language from 1942 to 1965. And his goal, his sole intention was to have an international language. And it's to keep in mind throughout this short presentation today, it's a language that we started with that had all of the capabilities of a language, but in a semantic form, not a phonetic one. So it relates to meaning at all times. And we have adapted it to be used with children who are non-speaking. Right from the beginning, we used inclusive design. And you'll see here a group of people who pioneered the use of Bliss at the Ontario Crippled Children's Centre in Toronto. They represented the disciplines of speech pathology, psychology, occupational therapy, rehabilitation engineering, myself education. We had a secretary in those days, and we had a linguist. Some scenes from Mr. Symbolman that show our children. We had group teaching, which was wonderful in those days, and we could learn from the children and from their parents. The work that was done at the center needed a formal organization to support it, and we established Blissymbolics Communication International in 1975. In 1982, Charles K. Bliss granted BCI an exclusive, non-cancelable, perpetual worldwide license for the application of Bliss, but it was for the use by handicapped persons and persons having communication, language, and learning difficulties. He retained the international use of Blissymbolics for himself. By our work, starting in Toronto and teaching people from around the world, the Blissymbolics use applied to augmentative and alternative communication, which is the name we came to use in the 80s for this field of endeavor. You can see from this slide that the use of Bliss for augmentative and alternative communication moved from Canada back in 71 to the many countries you see on this slide, the last being Taiwan and Guam in 1982. And it was taken there by the people who got their knowledge of Bliss from Canada. An example would be Sweden, where they learned about Bliss in AAC, augmentative and alternative communication. They learned from Canada. They took it to Denmark, Norway, Iceland, and Finland. We had many meetings over the years, and these meetings were hosted by different countries Here you see the list of countries that we went to develop vocabulary and to share our knowledge. And the one that I'm remember the best because it happened here in Canada, but in 2016, and you see the many people who participated, a full range of disciplines, countries, and our Bliss users got to the meeting, and they're all at the front, those who could get to it. The responsibility for the leadership moved from Canada to Sweden in 2011. We were seeing a reduction in the use of Bliss symbols because starting in the 80s and intensifying in the 90s, the introduction of picture sets and line drawings superseded the use of Bliss. There were two primary reasons for this. One was the education system in Canada moving to integrated education and no longer having children in a special classroom where the teacher would maybe stay with them for 3 or 4 years and could get training in specialized teaching. This did not happen. The child would be in an integrated classroom with a different teacher every year and surrounded by children who were speaking and who had other disabilities. So the child who was non-speaking became that quiet little child in the corner that didn't cause any trouble behaviorally, but who was not getting the specialized training they needed. Teachers saw a picture set or line drawings as being easier, and that's what the child received. You can get much more information about Blissymbolics by watching the film Mr. Symbol Man. It's available on YouTube, and reading the book In the Land of Invented Languages, published in 2009 by Erica Okrent, especially for the Bliss symbols 151 to 196. And then you can look at my book that was written about the children and their secrets back in the 70s. It will introduce you to the children and to what our program was like from a child's point of view. The title that's in our presentation today, The Questions as They Appear in Blissymbolics. It's a way for me to explain the symbols and also to begin what I think is an important thing, allowing the child to ask questions. So if you are told that the question mark by itself means what, then you can take that what and add the symbol for person, and you've now created the Bliss word from 2 Bliss symbol characters, and you have the Bliss word for who. If you say what cause, and there's an explanation I can't get into, but there is a meaning explanation for this being cause. What cause means why. Here's the symbol for the Bliss word for school, and it's a building where you give. And give divides from a container and something coming out of that container to signify giving. Knowledge is using the base of the building symbol, but then putting the mind symbol on top of it. And we call that the storehouse of the mind, where you have knowledge. You put them together, the building where you give knowledge, and you have school. The house where you have feelings is your home. And the house that's for animals becomes the barn. So Bliss words, and there are over 6,000 of them, they are all semantically based. Now you add to the Bliss words the Bliss symbolic strategies that come, because Blissymbolics, remember, is a language. And within that language, we have ways of symbolizing the tenses of verbs. They can be active or passive, conditional. All of these indicators tell you what form of verb. For the nouns, we can do plural and possessive. We can do the same for pronouns. And here, it's important that the symbols appear in the correct position in space. We think of Bliss symbols being on the earth line and on the sky line. If something is on the earth line, and it's a plus. It's something you possess. So we're using location as well as the semantic meaning behind a symbol. This is the symbol for plural, and you'll see it comes from multiplication symbol. The large form that goes right from earth to sky is multiplication. You take that symbol, you make it very small, and you put it up over the skyline, and you get to the plural of I, person number one, and that becomes we and they. And I'm going to move on to time and then come back to people in a minute. The parabolic mirror is used to signify time. It's curved looking backwards when you're thinking of literacy and you're thinking of English, reading from left to right. You're looking back at the past. You're looking forward to the future. And for the present, it's this period of time right now between the past and the future. We get to the pronouns by using the first, second, and third person. And here you see where the numbers are being used very effectively. The people are all based on a limited number of symbols, and you see protection and woman and man. These all are applied within the symbols for all of the relatives. In addition to the grammar capabilities in Blissymbolics, here are the Bliss strategies that enable the user to expand their vocabulary. Opposite meaning and the combined strategies are the two that are used most frequently. An example is you say opposite meaning before happy and you get sad, and vice versa. An example of the combined strategy, you see the two interlocking small circles. They say that they are the symbols for combining. And when you combine the following elements, you create a new bliss symbol. And here the new bliss symbol is, this is limited time, and it's a time when you're happy, feeling up. So a period of time in which you have happiness becomes the symbol fun for an individual user. This is how symbols are sequenced into sentences. And I took this from a page in one of our symbol newsletters. Here's the communication display board that was created after the beginning years. We began by having standard displays for every student, and we very quickly moved to providing stamps, like postage stamps, that you would put on a blank grid and design the display to meet the needs of an individual user. We very soon learned that we had to individualize. And here you see Sean talking with his teacher. He's about to point to a symbol. He's just finding out which one he wants to say. Here are two early examples of technology that never were used. They were prototypes that proved ineffective, but we did a lot of experimenting. This is another example of early technology for a student that was able to walk and needed his symbols on his walker. This was the first early prototype with light emitting diodes. We only found that we had some trouble with them. The student would control the scanning of the lights over this display. It just meant that when they went out into the sunshine, it did not work. This was the first produced by a manufacturer display. The Prentke-Romic manufacturer produced this 100 bliss symbol scanner. It was controlled by the user with a joystick or some version of a joystick, scanning the lights on the display. And we tried so many things, and Sue Odell just demonstrated how she had to multitask, and she was trying things on her computer screen. She was using her foot to control things, and she also was looking at her bliss symbol display. Sue's symbol sentences were up to 13 bliss words in length. Now, the latest in my involvement with technology was with the BMW. I designed it in the early 90s, and I wanted to just say what it relied on. It required Blissymbolics. It required the MinSpeak strategy developed by Bruce Baker, and it required word strategy. by Bruce Baker. In the BMW, the MinSpeak relied on associated meanings in order to get to your final meaning. So you had an apple icon. That apple could represent eating. It could represent redness and all colors. And it could represent fruit and all fruits. It would depend on the other symbols that you put into the code. This is the BMW display of Lee Merrick. It had the QWERTY keyboard. You can see the QWERTY is available to the individual who wants to use it. But it also has Bliss symbols that can be used within code sequences. And it can be used with the free associations of MinSpeak in order to arrive at codes to get vocabulary. The word strategy, which I converted to Bliss symbols, appeared at the top of the display. Pete Zine is a wonderful demonstrator of the BMW today. The use of Blissymbolics, because it's a language, enables it to be applied to language development, cognitive development, and literacy acquisition. So in thinking of how it's being used today, the work that I did in 1998 looked at the reading acquisition of adults who had severe physical and speech problems. The mammoth amount of data I collected and analyzed gave a lot of guidance to how we could teach literacy. And that, along with something I'm going to show you in a minute. Before I do, though, I wanted you to see what the dedication was for my thesis, and the fact that our work needs to provide dignity and hope to the people who use Bliss. I wanted to emphasize that because I see the same happening in the B project. We are, through inclusive design, able to give the opportunity for dignity and hope for the future for the people we serve. In South Africa, Louisa Alberts is teaching speaking children who come from over 10 different dialects to learn to read English through this internationally, originally used language of Blissymbolics. The main features of Blissymbolics for the AAC user are that the Bliss symbols are composed of semantic. You do not need any knowledge of phonetic, spelling, or representation of speech. And the second thing is we use that range of strategies. You saw them being alluded to in BMW. When we have those two elements, we give the AAC user control and we give them agency, which again are the two important things we need to give them. The added benefit that a Bliss user has after they have acquired proficiency in using Bliss for their spoken language environment and to learn to read, they then have this added enrichment, which is to use Blissymbolics as an international language, and the B project is facilitating that happening as well. Now, I would like to show my dream of one of the ways in which Blissymbolics can be used in the future. Judith Treviranus, who is the founding leader of the Baby Bliss project, speaks of this mad escape from the grid. We have the opportunity of looking beyond the use of a matrix and to arrange symbols in a dynamic way and in a non-matrix way. This is just part of my dream, that the individual would decide who they were talking to or when they wanted it to relate to past or present, how they would like to communicate, cause and effect, why they want to communicate, and they could choose one of those. And when by choosing the who, they would receive the people that they speak to most frequently, and this is myself, and either one of my sons or my two helpers, or whether it's some new acquaintance, I would choose that. I'm going to choose Kevin. My favorite topics with Kevin are sharing the news, or sharing a story, but I would progress through some circles instead of across a grid. Just an idea. If you would like to learn more about Blissymbolics, here is a list of references. Thank you. And by saying thank you, I express my feelings and I give them to you. They are very positive.
Thank you, Shirley. For the audience in Montreal, we propose this question for further discussion. How can Blissymbolics, with the help of AI technologies and other developmental technologies, transform lives of people beyond cerebral palsy? And thank you, Shirley, for being here. And thank you for listening to this presentation.
And thank you to both of you.